you make of the fact that he says, you want a civil war on the streets of America?
No, that's just the opposite. I don't want a civil war. A civil war would happen if you left it to people like him.
Trump accusing Newsom of interfering with federal law enforcement, and border czar Tom Homan suggesting that arresting Governor Newsom. Here's what the governor had to say to Homan on Sunday.
The fear, the horror, the hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn.
Gavin, 8 to 10,000 people entered every single day of the last 4 years. Do the math. 10 to 12 million illegal entries. It's either 3 million every year or 2.5 million every year. It's either 200,000 a month or 250,000 a month. It's either 7,500 a day, 8,000. At a good day, if they do everything right, ICE can deport somewhere between 800 and 2,000. So in other words, you're saying that under your president that you didn't say a word about, they let in 8,000 people a day. ICE comes in, and about 20,000 people a year in Los Angeles are the victims of hit-and-run accidents, and that's believed to be largely people who are here illegally.
Wait, did you say 20,000?
Yes, 20,000.
Hit and run? Holy mackerel.
Yeah, and about 8% of the accidents, 8 to 10% that are fatal, are hit and run. So you've got to, and then you have enormous overhead on we're broke. And Gavin Newsom said he was going to give $500 million to illegal aliens for Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal right now covers 40% of the entire state is on Medi-Cal, and 50% of every birth is on Medi-Cal. And when you look at some of the enormous problems the state has, such as, it went from the top 10% in schools 50 years ago in test scores to the bottom 10%. And it has a highest per capita crime rate in terms of property crimes in San Francisco. Its infrastructure has got a diminishing share of the budget as Medi-Cal crowds it out. And we invented the Cloverleaf. We had some of the most sophisticated airports and road system, and the 101, the I-5, and the 99 in aggregate are probably the most dangerous highways, if I could use that term, freeways in the country. The 99 is surely by miles driven. There's areas where it's only 4 lanes, and it's a death trap. And yet we have a $15 billion boondoggle, $20 billion high-speed rail that will never be finished. And we have 27% of the population was not born in the United States. So my point is that you would have this, if you're going to bring in so many people, and they're going to be largely without English fluency or a high school diploma, you have an enormous problem of assimilation and integration. And we don't teach anymore civic education. And the melting pot is in disrepute, even though it's worked brilliantly. And this Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are exemplary of California's problems. So she's now saying to the federal government, we're going to resist you. And even Caruso, this opportunistic bootskin, that's a word from Greek tragedy that means that you wear a shoe that has points on both ends and you can go either way as far as your political sympathies. He chimed in attacking ICE. He was a multi-billionaire developer. For a while, they had appointed him czar of the Pacific Palisades rebuild, but that faded very quickly. He ran for mayor. I think he was either a Republican or independent. Then he re-registered as Democrat. He lost in a close race to Karen Bass. He wants to be mayor again. He probably would be an improvement over her, but he feels that the immigrant population is so large, the illegal immigrant, that it's politically suicidal to even question it. What he doesn't understand is if you look at the Hispanic community, this illegal alien population of 11 to 12 million, first of all, half of them were not from Mexico. And so the Mexican-American population, many of whom parents came illegally, are split on the issue. And they're split because when you look at social services that they depend on, from dialysis to emergency health, they're flooded now with people from all over the world that are, and EBT card. Just go to any place, as I do, in southwestern Fresno County, Tulare County, Kings County, and go into a food market and just stand in line, and you'll see Mexican-American middle-class professionals that are appalled that these people are bringing out 4 or 5 or 6 EBT cards. And so my point of all of this is there is no this is not a Hispanic issue as they think they're going to demagogue at Karen Bass. I didn't even get into the question that the black community, although it's shrinking in California, is overwhelmingly, not the black elite, but the black rank and file are overwhelmingly angry at illegal immigration. So the politicians are out. So here you had this Orwellian situation where ICE people were trying to carry out deportations. Many of them were not just rank and file illegal aliens, but they had criminal records or they were involved in illicit activity, and they had violent confrontation. It's a felony to hit an ICE officer. Watch those videos. They were all assaulted. And here you had Caruso, the would-be next mayor, and then you had Karen Bass, the mayor, siding with them, and then you had Gavin Newsom coming in and attacking Trump. And very quickly, if you went down the list, Jack, so you had Caruso, who was a failure as rebuilding Pacific Palisades. It's not being rebuilt. Then you had Karen Bass, who was junketing, of all places, in Ghana at the height of fire season in a county which would not allow people individually or collectively to clean the hillsides and stop the fuel for such a fire. And then you had the deputy mayor, who has just been arrested for phoning in a bomb threat and was under house detention. Then you had the water and power czar, who came from PG&E with a checkered record and getting $700,000 while she had idled a key life-saving reservoir that had not even been fixed for months. Then you had the DEI fire chief, who couldn't finish a sentence while there were hydrants all over the mountainsides of LA's communities that were not functional. And then you had that crazy deputy of hers that said if she went in and she saw a man and she couldn't lift him, it was his fault. And given all of that, Karen Bass has the audacity to blame Donald Trump and ICE. She says, and then Gavin Newsom weighed in, and he used adjectives like, this is cruel, this is reckless, this is just a quota. Gavin, 8 to 10,000 people entered every single day of the last 4 years. Do the math. 10 to 12 million illegal entries. It's either 3 million every year or 2.5 million every year. It's either 200,000 a month or 250,000 a month. It's either 7,500 a day, 8,000. At a good day, if they do everything right, ICE can deport somewhere between 800 and 2,000. So in other words, you're saying that under your president that you didn't say a word about, they let in 8,000 people a day, and they were unaudited. And we kicked out 8,500 brave, patriotic soldiers, and you let in the same number every single day. Anybody try to get a real ID, you need a passport or a birth certificate and proof of residence plus your driver's license. And the last 4 years, people from all over the world were coming into the United States on nocturnal flights with no such ID. So that is what we're doing. And I could not believe Gavin Newsom said this was reckless and cruel. And then he attacked Trump for trying to rectify in a small way. This is going to be with us, Jack, for generations. We're never going to find out all the 10 to 12 million that are here, or we're never going to get rid of all 500,000 with criminal records. And this was on top of 10 to 15 to 20 million previous illegal aliens. And so they created this problem that was cruel and reckless. And here you have Gavin from his mansion sounding off about Trump being cruel and reckless and going after quotes. Gavin, can I just finish this rant with what's cruel? What is cruel is coming. I wish you would fly down in your private jet to Fresno Airport, and I will drive you around to certain gas stations, and you will see poor, largely Mexican-American working people, and they will line up because gas at a cut-right place will be about 8 to 10 cents cheaper, and it will be packed. And they will be going in and giving $20 or $30 in cash, which is it's over $5. In some places on the coast it's $6, but here it's $5.20, $5.30, and that gives them about 4 gallons. And if you fill them up, their trucks, it's about $140. And they don't have any money. They don't have any money to pay your insurance. You drove out, your regulations drove out refiners. We're down to 2 or 3 of them. People can't afford gas. They can't afford housing. They can't afford insurance. They can't afford electricity. When it gets to be 108 here, it will very shortly. You go to Target, you go to Walmart, and you'll see poor people in there all day long, all afternoon long for the free air conditioning. 1/4 of this state cannot pay their power bills. That's incredible. That came under your tenure. You're not completely responsible. But you know who is responsible, Gavin? People like you. And who are people like you? These are wealthy insider children of privilege and insider government contacts and influence peddlers. And they were a select class. They have a pedigree of being multi-generational wealthy and multi-generational in politics. And who are they? They're Jerry Brown, your predecessor. And where is he? He's in retirement up in Grass Valley, off the grid in a beautiful ranch. Where's Barbara Boxer, the liberal who harangued about everything? She's down in what, Rancho Mirage? Dianne Feinstein was a nice person, but she had a huge Lake Tahoe estate, a huge Presidio Heights home. And then we go to Kamala Harris, another architect of this insane state. She's where? In Brentwood with her husband in a beautiful home. And where are you, Gavin? $9 million new home? So, and we get to the locus classicus, Jack, the Pelosi family. How did Nancy Pelosi go into politics, and now she's leaving politics with her wheeler-dealer real estate husband, and their net worth is over $200 million, supposedly. And they have a huge palatial estate up in Napa, and you saw the house where he was unfortunately and unfairly and tragically attacked in San Francisco. So they are wealthy. So basically what I'm getting at is we have about 8 to 10, and I didn't even get all of them, multimillionaires, left-wing, children of privilege, coastal denizens, all within a 50-mile radius, drawing on every little perk and leverage that their office could handle, and then retiring into opulence, while the rest of the state is medieval, and the middle class fled 200,000 to 300,000 a year. And the poor, it's a state of the subsidized poor and the affluent coastal elite. And they did that. And he has the gumption to say that Donald Trump is cruel because he wants to put back in their own country 10 million people who cut in the front of the line, broke the law, took advantage of that open border, made fools out of the people who were law-abiding and waiting in line for legal entrance. And he says Donald Trump is reckless. And you, Gavin, are reckless and you're cruel. And what you did to the state is beyond description. Talk to the people in Pacific Palisades. Talk to people who can't get into a doctor's office. Talk to people who can't afford to pay their power bill, 1/4 of the population. Talk to the people who can't afford to fill up their gas tank. And then talk about being cruel. Officials in California have told us was either a lie or misleading. So Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, assured us that this was caused by Tom Homan and ICE, that they were investigating people with criminal records. And then the ICE detention center was mobbed and there was no violence. But then she said, and everybody should listen to this, she said, we're not going to stand for this. And what she was referring to was a normal ICE operation. Federal government has jurisdiction to go after people who are wanted by the federal government, as these illegal aliens were. So what did she mean by that? I guess she meant that she didn't call the police for 2 hours, the LAPD, and then she put them behind her as if they were, and they kind of went like this. I don't want to get fired, so I have to toe the party line. This is peaceful. Then we had Representative Torres. I think she's a Guatemalan immigrant, so she should be very sensitive to these issues. She said to ICE, get the F out of LA. Think about that. That was a member of the House of Representatives. In other words, I thought, well, how are you going to do that? What do you mean by that? And so the narrative was that it was all peaceful, which it never was, because they were throwing rocks from the beginning at passerby cars. Then Donald Trump said we might have to send in federal troops because they don't have enough. And then that escalated. What escalated it, everyone, were this commentary. This commentary from Hakeem Jeffries a couple of days earlier, where he said he was going to dox the identification of ICE officers. I think that's illegal to do. And then there was, as I said, the House of Representative member Torres threatening ICE, get the F out. And then there was Karen Bass, we won't stand for. And then we had our governor. And the subtext of that, Jack, is there was a poll taken a couple of weeks ago. How many Democrats think Gavin Newsom should be the presidential nominee in 2028? 2%. And then we had another poll in SurveyMonkey, and it surveyed 30 polls. And what was Gavin's approval rating? 27% favorability. So I think so what did he do about that? Well, the first thing he said was that ICE was cruel and reckless, and it was just going after quotas. Well, what else are they going to do, Gavin? You guys let in 10,000 a day for 4 years, every day, 12 million. So to deport them, in a good day, they can deport maybe, 1,000, 1,500. If they were having a quota to match what you guys did, they need 8,000 a day. So they're not even going to get near the number that you let in, you being the Democratic Party, unaudited. So then Gavin, then he attacked Trump for nationalizing the Guard. He dared Holman to arrest him for impeding federal officers. Gavin, you're an ignoramus. You really are. Do you realize that the federal government gets $5.5 trillion a year in federal revenue? And if you are correct, and I don't think you are, because when you say Californians pay this amount and they get back this in services, they have a lot of other overhead you're not talking about, like more homeless and more illegal aliens in any other state, and that requires a lot of federal help that you're not adjudicating. But in any case, Gavin's $80 billion that he thinks pays the bills, it equals, Jack, 1.5% of all federal revenues income. So Gavin, you're trying to tell all of us that we pay the federal bills and we shouldn't. And if you look at the statute, and I looked it up, the federal statute, if people take Gavin's advice and don't pay their federal income taxes in protest, but in any case, you told people not to pay their taxes. If they don't pay their taxes, it's a felony for anyone to aid, abet, advocate someone to break federal tax law. So what we're getting, bottom line, is we have something like the nullification crisis of South Carolina in 1832, and we have all of these state officials who seem to think that Californians are not Americans, Sorry, Gavin, I lived here my whole my whole life. I'm a fifth generation. My allegiance is not to California, it's to the United States. And I pay my taxes to the United States, and I follow federal law when I go to Yosemite or I go down I-5. These are federal jurisdictions. They're not yours. And I feel much more comfortable being an American than one of your Californians. And if you want to talk about cruel, Gavin, cruel is what you are doing. Highest gas taxes, highest income tax, among the highest sales tax, $70 billion deficit, some of the worst schools in the nation, half the homeless, fifth of the people under the poverty line, 1/4 don't pay their power. I could go on. That's your state. So why don't you take care of that rather than grandstanding about illegal aliens that are breaking the law. And then finally, we get to the optics. So Hiram Jeffries, who wants to dox ICE, and Karen Bass, the mayor, who she's not in Ghana, by the way. She's here. She seems to she likes to see LA burn. In other words, when she was there, it was burning, and now it's burning again, and she doesn't seem to be bothered by that. But she's not doing her job. Maybe the deputy mayor can step in. No, he can't. That's right. He's arrested, and he pled guilty to phoning in a bomb threat. He was the deputy mayor of Los Angeles for public safety. And he's unfortunately in jail now for lying about it as well. But the optics for all these people, Adam Schiff weighed in, Kamala Harris, she this is 2.0. The first one was, and these demonstrations are going to go on, and they're not going to stop. They're going to go on to election. Well, that was the 2020. She's back again with more of that. And so they're advocating something that is not going to work. We just got a poll, as I said, 54%, even with this negative publicity, still support the deportations. 62% of Hispanics 3 weeks ago said that they support Donald Trump's policies the first 3 months. That was the highest ethnic group of any. So I don't know if you're going to get a wide-scale defection in the Hispanic, but most of them are going to think, God, I don't want that guy in my neighborhood. And the optics, I wrote about this in Mexifornia 20 years ago. So basically, you'll watch all these optics, and it's kind of like back in CNN in 2000, mostly peaceful when you see the car burn. Well, they say most be peaceful while these cars are burning and they're defacing things. But the worst thing for the left is you have these illegal aliens, apparently, and they are throwing American flags on a fire, and they are destroying property, and they're waving the Mexican flag. So I said, oh, wow, this is really smart. You're waving the flag of the country under no circumstances you wish to return to, but you're so proud of it that you're waving it as long as you don't have to go back there. And then you are burning the flag that under no circumstances you would like to leave that country. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That does not make a lot of sense. And I think those optics are toxic. I wish they have I hope in the midterms they have a commercial, and the first shot is Gavin telling people not to pay their taxes, and then it's Karen Bass saying that we're not going to stand for this. Why there's all this burning in the background, and then there is Representative Torres saying, get the F out, and then there's Hiram Jeffries saying his little spiel, and then they show these people burning, waving the Mexican flag, and then burning the American flag, mobbing all of the streets, spitting in the face of ICE people, throwing rocks at them, and then they have a little cut from President Scheinbaum that we're going to protect our people, and we're going to give them legal counsel. I don't think so. She kind of went quiet today, Jack, because the big, beautiful bill, if you read it, has a provision, and they are adjudicating where it should be 2.5 or 3.5 tax on the $63 billion that these people that some of them are out in the street burning, send back to their relatives in Mexico. Many of them on public support of some sort in the United States. So I think if I know Donald Trump, he got on the phone to her, because she hasn't said anything today. He probably said something like this: it's 5% now. You want to keep talking? It's 10%. Because I like to tax it, and you've got you say you're always bragging. Obrador said he sent $40 million, and we're not going to pay their housing, their education, their food, their health care costs, so they can send you back $200 or $300 a week of money that you won't spend on your own people. So we're going to tax it, and the more you talk and interfere in the internal affairs of the United States, the higher the taxes.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at, it's a lose-lose. Optics are bad. Politics are bad. The people mouthing off are bad.
Are bad.
Polls are bad. Everything is bad. And people get really angry when people come to this country illegally, and then they spit on it. And then they wave a flag of a country that they don't want to go to. And by the way, if there were a bunch of expatriate Americans, of which there's about 1 million in Mexico, I'm told. And they decided that Mexico was unfair to the United States. Let's say they were all blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people. I don't know, in Mazatlan. They all went to the Central Plaza in Mexico City, and they started burning the Mexican flag and waving the American flag to protest. I don't think they'd get out alive. I really don't. I think people would be vigilantes and attack them. I know the government would.
We can tell you that the National Guard is stationed here around federal buildings. We're just outside the detention center. You can see them there. This federal building really became a focal point for protesters after it emerged that ICE detainees were being held here. And now hundreds of Marines are expected to join the National Guard under Trump's orders as tensions continue escalating. Take a look. About 700 U.S. Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment out of 29 Palms received weekend orders and are on the way, expected to arrive this morning. And although they're trained for close combat, officials say these Marines won't be on the front lines. Instead, they'll be focused on crowd control and de-escalation. Those are skills that they've been trained in specifically for this mission. That, according to U.S. Northern Command, which confirmed that those Marines will support the more than 2,000 National Guard troops already activated across the area. And late yesterday, the Pentagon said it's mobilizing an additional 2,000 National Guard troops under President Trump's order. And that now pushes the number of military personnel to more than 4,000, with growing opposition from Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass. The governor calling the deployment unnecessary, saying it'll only inflame tensions. Now, if we come back out here to our live shot, we've been seeing these National Guard troops checking IDs for employees entering the building. The president's move to activate these National Guard troops marks the first time the federal government has done so without a governor's consent since the 60s. Again, they won't be on the front lines with local law enforcement like the LAPD taking people into custody like we've seen. We're not exactly sure what the presence will look like, but again, hundreds are expected to arrive here in Los Angeles this morning.